Creating so many problems. Some of these problems can make you sick.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the food. Dr. Jen has been looking into this. How long? I've always heard that a freezer might to keep the food okay for 48 hours. Is that right?
That's actually true. So let's talk about refrigerators and freezers. Let's start with the freezers, as you mentioned, Mike. A freezer, if the door is kept closed, can keep food for about 48 hours after the power goes out. But that actually depends on how full the freezer is. So in other words, the more food that's in the freezer, the more food that's packed in tightly, it's going to stay cool longer. So if it's a full freezer, we're talking 48 hours. If your freezer is only, say, half full, you're looking at about 1 day or 24 hours.
Well, we're halfway there.
Yeah, yes, we are. And then refrigerators, keep in mind, refrigerators are a lot different. They're only 4 hours. So if you keep the refrigerator door closed...
4 hours?
Yes, it's a lot different. So freezers, you can do up to 2 days, 48 hours. But freezers, refrigerators rather, keeping the door closed, you're looking at 4 hours before the food, you really have to get concerned about it.
Well, we just saw eggs. Don't eggs last even outside of a fridge?
Well, they can, but let's talk about really what the important things here are. The temperature is what's really important here, the actual temperature of the food item. What we're concerned about is food poisoning. And a general rule is if the food stays 40 degrees or less, it's probably okay. But if that food gets to be above 40 degrees and stays out for at least 2 hours or longer, that's really when we get concerned. You got to throw that food out.
I just think about, let's say you make a pot of spaghetti and you fall asleep. You don't put it up back in the fridge and you wake up the next day. You know how many people would keep the spaghetti? No, I'm just being honest.
Well, I'm not.
No, of course. And everybody, people are guilty of that. So you leave it out on the counter. So what's wrong? Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like, can't you just sniff it and you can kind of tell?
Well, I mean, real life is what you're talking about, Chanel, right?
Yes.
People do that. But should we be doing that? No. We really need to be putting our food away. There's a couple general rules about that. Foods that are hot should be kept hot. Foods that are meant to be cold should be kept cold. So after you prepare foods, put it right away. Package it, refrigerate it, because that's really what's going to keep the bacterial count down so that food poisoning does not happen.
Mike, you mentioned earlier this morning, can you put stuff in the snow? I would think that would be okay, right?
I'm so glad that you asked about that. There's a number of people actually that really do put things in the snow.
Yes.
Not a good idea, and I'll tell you why. Yeah, it's not a good idea. Intuitively, it seems like, oh, that makes sense. It's snow. It should be cold. But there's a couple things with that. Remember, there are animals outside. You don't want bugs or deer or any, raccoons or things finding your food. That's the first thing. But the second thing is, remember, even if the food is in the snow, the sun can come out and make that temperature warm up. The key here is the temperature. When foods get above 40 degrees, that's when we get concerned. That's when we have to throw them out.
Maybe you could take a cooler, put the food in the cooler, then put the cooler in the snow, and put a big brick on it.
Well, I like the idea about the food in the cooler. That is perfectly okay, especially if the power is going to be out for greater than 4 hours, which is something we're seeing in our area. Food can be in a cooler. You want to make sure it's insulated. Throw some ice in there. Keep the door closed. You got to make sure that cooler stays, the temperature inside is less than 40 degrees.
Yeah, I stopped talking because I've had, anybody has ever had a case of food poisoning or, you get sick, it is the worst feeling in the world, and nothing is worth a bag of chicken or whatever it is, a dozen eggs. You know what I mean? It's not worth it.
So true.
It's so true. For another day, I have a great food poisoning story.
It's the worst.
Well, and one last thing, Chanel and Mike, about this. A lot of people will taste the food to see if it's still good. They're wondering, is my food good? Do not taste it. Do not taste it to figure out if it's okay or not.
Well, how can you tell something's bad? Is it the freezer burn and stuff like that?
There's a couple things. You want to use all your senses except for taste, okay? You want to feel it. If it feels funny, if it feels too warm, that's probably not a good sign. If it smells funny, of course. If the color has changed, if it's gotten mushy, these are things that should tell you. But don't taste it because you're really putting yourself at risk.
Okay. Hey, do you have power?
I do, yes.
Okay. What county do you live in?
Well, I live in Philadelphia, so I mean, I've been really lucky, and I feel so. My heart goes out to all those who've lost power because it's a really big deal. People need to stay safe out there.
Hey, real quickly here, because some people are trying to ride it out in their homes without heat.
Yeah.
I mean, because some people can't leave. I mean, just what's the best way? Just layer the blankets on top of you?
Yeah, blankets are really good. Make sure that you're bundling up. Staying close together is really important. You've got to be careful with candles. Not recommended. You've got to be very careful with that. Really, I'd say the best thing, it's almost like when we talk about heat safety in the summertime, I honestly think the best place and the best thing to do is to go to a warm place. Go to a friend's house. Go spend time with family or friends just to make sure that you're in a safe environment because there can be problems with cold weather, too.
And keep those generators outside of the house, darn it.
Thank you, Dr. Jen.
Great job.
Thanks so much.
7:36 now. Speaking